Hey guys, this is Zach with ECS Tuning, and today we're taking a look at our brand new Luft-Technik intake system and Kohlefaser Luft-Technik intake system for the MK7 GTI, Golf R, and the Audi 8V A3 and S3. Today I'm going to show you how to remove the stock intake and install the Luft-Technik intake system on our MK7 GTI. Here's the tools you're going to need. Okay, so here we've got all the tools you're going to need for install. It's a pretty basic kit. We've got a pair of regular channel lock pliers. We've got our Schwab and hose clamp pliers. We've got a 1/4" ratchet with a couple extensions. We've got a 7mm, 8mm, and 10mm socket. 10mm doesn't need to be deep well necessarily. We've got a 4 and a 5mm Allen bit and a T25 driver. So the first step is going to be to remove the stock intake. First we're going to remove the two T25 Torx screws at the side of the snorkel. Okay. Now we're going to get this coolant hose out of the way. Now we're going to pull the snorkel out. To do that, you're going to kind of need to tip up on the front of the airbox at the same time as you pull out on the snorkel. Okay, now you're going to remove the vacuum line for your intake manifold flaps, and then we're going to pull the secondary air off. Okay, now we need to remove this hose clamp and then pull the airbox. For removing the hose clamp, I like to use our Schwab and hose clamp pliers. Very handy. Pull the hose back, and then the airbox will pop straight upwards. Okay, now to remove the rest of the intake tube, we got to remove one 7mm hose clamp. And once that's loose, it should pull right off. Okay, now we need to remove the original coolant line in favor of the ECS line that reroutes underneath the airbox. You do stand a chance to lose some coolant on this, so I like to lay down a rag to cover some stuff up and have a rag in my hand to catch anything that comes out of the source. I also like to have the ECS piece ready to go to pop on as soon as you can. It's just two little pinch clamps, so you can get it pretty easily with some pliers. I'm going to pop this side off and then stick the ECS side on. Okay, now same thing with the other side. Okay, not too bad. Now wipe out whatever coolant you did lose, and we'll continue. Okay, so we've tightened up our coolant line. Now we're ready to install a breather filter assembly. Pop the hose onto the assembly, and then drop the bracket onto the rightmost post for the airbox, and then drop the supplied rubber spacer on top of the bracket. Okay, now we're ready to put our heat shield into place. We've also got a clip on the bottom for the coolant line that we installed. We're going to be using the right and rearmost posts from the stock airbox to mount our heat shield. Just get it lined up and push it down until it bottoms out, and then that'll also sandwich the breather filter in place. Now we can pop our coolant line into the clip, and now we're ready to install the front part of the heat shield. Okay. Okay, now that this is in place, we've got 5 bolts that need to go into location. Okay, now we'll tighten them up. Okay, now that we've got the heat shield in place, we're ready to install the aluminum intake pipe. For that, we need to remove this little 5mm Allen bolt and replace it with a 10mm bolt that is supplied that will mount the aluminum intake tube to the engine. Okay, now we're going to install this protective bulb seal in the opening in the heat shield for the aluminum tube. You just get it started at the first corner and work it around. And then once that's in place, we're ready to install the aluminum tube. Okay, now we're ready to install the aluminum intake pipe. 10mm bolt is going to be replacing the 5mm Allen bolt that we removed. All right, now you're going to reinstall your intake runner vacuum line onto this little nipple on the bottom of your intake tube. Okay, now with the hose clamps already in place on the silicone coupler, I'm going to push it down onto the turbo inlet until it bottoms out and then work it onto the intake tube. Slide the hose clamps into place. And we'll tighten those up in a minute, but for now I'm going to install the air filter. Okay, with that in place, I believe we have everything installed. We just need to do our final adjustments, tighten up hose clamps, tighten up the mounting bracket for the intake tube, and then install our bulb seal, which helps isolate heat from the filter. Okay, now that we've got this intake installed, we're going to show you our carbon fiber version on this Audi S3. Installation is almost identical with the exception of this carbon fiber lid. There are 3 slots for fasteners at the back of the lid that I like to start in the heat shield before trying to install it, and then I just slip the lid into place. Okay, once you've got your lid dropped into place, you'll install 2 fasteners at the front of the lid. Tighten all 5 fasteners up, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, for the last one, it's a little close to the battery box, so you can take the battery out, or I just like to use an Allen key and deal with it. With the Luft-Technik intake installed, we're all strapped down to the dyno, and we're ready to make a few pulls and see what kind of power we get. In addition to our intake, we've got a turbo back exhaust and a Stage 1 Plus cob tune. Let's do a few runs and see what kind of power we make. All right, now that we're done with the install, we're done dynoing, it's time for the fun part. Let's see how it sounds.